pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Dr. Bowler, could we have roll call, please?
Mrs. Lohr.
Present.
Ms. Lauer.
Present.
Dr. Powers.
Present.
Ms. Scott.
Here.
Mrs. Wise.
Present.
Mr. Irwin.
Here.
Mrs. Killian.
Present. Thank you. This is a meeting where we have a reorganization or organization of the board for this coming year, and if there are no objections, I will designate myself as the temporary chairperson. So the meeting is open for a nomination for president.
I'd like to nominate Stacy Killian.
I'll second that nomination. I wish she could be here though, but that's just a temporary problem.
Yes, she is joining us virtually this evening. Any comments? We have a roll call vote.
Yes. Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Thank you. And since our new president is joining us virtually, I will go ahead and open the board for nominations for vice president.
I would like to nominate Amy Moore for vice president.
I'll second that.
We have roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
And with that, I will pass over the gavel.
Okay, the next item of business is the election of our board secretary. Is there a motion?
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Jackie Lauer for board secretary.
I'll second that.
Mr. Irwin has nominated Mrs. Lauer, and Mrs. Wise has seconded. We have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers. Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye. Next on our agenda is the appointment of standing committees for the school board. Do we have any discussion or any a motion about the board appointments?
Due to COVID, a lot of meetings weren't able to happen last year, so I would make the motion that we keep standing committees from last year and all board members serve in the same capacity on board level committees that they did last year.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Irwin has made the motion to keep our standing appointments, and Mrs. White has seconded. Is there any discussion from the board?
Hopefully, it will be a year that we can be more representative of the committees that we serve.
Okay, Dr. Kohler, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye. And I should note that all of those are on the vigoschools.org website, if anyone wants to reference those appointments. The next item of business is board approval of the 2022 annual board meeting calendar. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the annual board meeting calendar for 2022.
I'll second.
Mrs. Wise has made the motion to accept, Mrs. Flowers seconded that. Could we have, is there any discussion? Excuse me. No? Dr. Fuller, roll call, please.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes the reorganizational meeting agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
The motion to move by Mrs. Lauer. Who seconded that? Dr. Powers. And roll call, please.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Okay, moving on. Do I get to pin the gavel to open the new meeting? I really want to do that.
Thank you for not scaring us.
You're welcome. At this time, we're going to call to order the Board of Finance meeting for this year. And the first item on this, oh, do we need to do a roll call for this as well? Sorry, forgive me. Dr. Biller, could we have a roll call?
Sure. Mrs. Lohr,
Present.
Ms. Lauer,
Present.
Dr. Powers,
Present.
Ms. Scott,
Here.
Mrs. Wise,
Present.
Mr. Irwin,
Present.
Mrs. Killian.
Present.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the Board of Finance meeting minutes from last year, January 11th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Finance meeting minutes as is.
I'll second it.
Okay, that was Mrs. Wise, and, okay, and second by Mrs. Lauer. We need a roll call, Dr. Fuller.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Okay.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is the election of Board of Finance officers for 2022. I believe we need a motion to make that happen, and typically that's been the president, vice president, and secretary of the board in years past. Is there a motion from the board?
I make a motion to make the Board of Finance officers the same as the 2022 school board officers.
I'll second that.
Mr. Irwin has made the motion to accept that, and Dr. Powers has seconded. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Next, we have a review of revenue from investments from Mrs. Wilson.
Good evening, Vice President Laura, Superintendent Hayward, the members of the Board of School Trustees. Pursuant to Indiana Code, the Board of School Trustees is required to meet annually, elect officers from their membership as the Board of Finance, receive and review the report of investments of the prior year, and review the overall investment policy of the school corporation as contained in Board Policy DFA. Total interest received during 2021 was $74,570.35, as shown in this evening's board packet. 2021 interest earnings were $65,361.12 on money market accounts and $9,209.23 on checking accounts. All interest earned other than on the insurance reserve fund was receipted into the education fund of the school district. At your pleasure, we would like to make a motion for you to approve the report of investments for 2021. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Need a motion and second, and then we can do discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve the presentation that Ms. Wilson has made on investments.
I'll second that.
Mr. Irwin has made a motion, and Mrs. Wise has seconded. Is there any discussion?
How has this performance been compared to previous years?
We're down significantly from last year, but last year was an unusual year where we had several certificates of deposit that were multi-year CDs that did mature in 2020. So that was a significant amount of money last year. I've put out some inquiries in fact, today, talking to the bank about possible certificates of deposit and locking some money for 2022. But as you know, there's an ebb and flow to our finances, so we're looking at possibly investing from the rainy day fund as we can lock that money and set that money aside, so we're exploring those options as we speak.
Any others? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Mrs. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye. And Dr. Hayward, you're next.
The administration looks to appoint Vigo County School Corporation Treasurer Donna Wilson and Deputy Treasurer Cindy Dayhart, who would be bonded at the approved bonding amount.
I'll make a motion to appoint Donna Wilson as the treasurer and Cindy DeHart as the deputy treasurer. And I'll second.
Mrs. Wise has made a motion and Mrs. Scott has seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Golick, will we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers, Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye. That concludes the board agenda. Could we have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn and at the same time open our regular board meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn as well as open the regular meeting. We get a roll call, please.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Present.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Ms. Killian.
Aye. Okay, the regular meeting of the School Board of Trustees for Vigo County School Corporation is called to order, and do we need to have an additional roll call since we've already done that? Okay, thank you. I'm going to read the vision and mission statement. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. Next up on our agenda is the consent agenda. We're going to take the first two items together, the minutes of the previous two regular meeting and public hearing.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from both meetings.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mrs. Wise has made a motion and Dr. Powers seconded that. Is there any discussion?
Are we just doing the minutes here, or are we doing the entire consent agenda? We
We're only
typically-
doing the minutes, the
Okay.
first two items.
All right.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers, Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise, Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Ms. Killian.
Aye. Next up in the consent agenda is the finance reports. Is there any presentation from administration on this? No. Okay, so is there a motion to accept the finance reports?
I'll make a motion to accept the finance reports as is.
Second that. Mrs. Wise and Mrs. Lauer have made that motion and seconded. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers, Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye. Next up, donations, Superintendent Hayward.
Yes, the administration makes the recommendation for the following donations. Rio Grande Elementary School, a donation to Sarah Scott Middle School, a donation to Terre Haute South Vigo School, and West Vigo High School, as presented in your board packet.
I make a motion to approve the donations as presented.
I second.
Mr. Owens made a motion and Mrs. Scott has seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just thank you, as always.
Yes.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers, Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye. Okay, moving on to new business. We have Mr. Cox.
Vice President Ward, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the Board of Trustees, administration seeks approval of personnel and professional leave report as presented.
I'll make a motion to accept the personnel report and professional leave request as is.
I'll second that.
Mrs. White has made a motion, Mrs. Lauer seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say that as the addendum to the personnel report was our buyout, the retirements of teachers, and I looked over that list, and there were quite a few familiar names on there. I know I'm the youngest on here, so a lot of my teachers were in there. A lot of people that I worked with when I taught, and eternal gratitude to those folks. So thank you to everybody who served our corporation, who continues to serve. Thank you.
Definitely. Anyone else? Okay, Dr. Golden?
Ms. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers, Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next up, we have grants. Dr. Goller, I see you're here to present that. If you could present both of them together for us, that would be great.
Thank you. Vice President Lohr, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the board. At the November board meeting, you approved about a $400,000 grant, which was a Build, Grow, Learn Stabilization Grant. That was for 4 schools and 2 preschools. And tonight we bring you 2 more. This would be for $55,750, and this would be for the Deming Early Learning Center and Sugar Grove Elementary School. Funds are determined on student and staff numbers, and Dr. Fenton has provided us with a listing of reasons that those funds may be used for health and safety, personnel costs, facility and maintenance, COVID-19 safety, business, continuation, and mental health supports. So Dr. Fenton and Mrs. Ashley Bennett will be the grant administrators for that program. And then the second grant we bring you tonight is a second grant that we have had in the past, focused on, as you see here, robots, as well as different ways that we would include coding and programming in our curriculum. This would be for Benjamin Franklin Elementary. We also have this program at Fayette currently. So the grant would provide in classroom Sphero robots. And we're very excited that we had a teacher, Erin Eddington, that took it upon herself to apply for this program. Very excited that she earned this grant. And Dr. Newport and Mrs. Horrell, the principal at Franklin, will be working with her to implement this program. And we ask for your approval for these 2 grants this evening.
I move approval of the grants as presented, but I'm going to keep talking so that Dr. Goller can get back to her seat.
I will second that.
Mr. Irwin has made a motion and Mrs. Wise has seconded. Is there any discussion from the board?
So you said the second grant, a teacher actually applied for and received. So
That's awesome. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Does that require special training in order for her to teach that? Did she? Or,
There is a professional development component that comes with that.
Nice, thank you. Anything else? Okay, Dr. Gould?
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers, Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye. Next up, we're going to hear from Dr. Hayworth about the repurposing and redistricting of Meadows Elementary School.
Good evening. Good evening, board. Vice President of the board. Care if I take my mask off?
Go ahead.
Tonight, the administration brings forth its recommendation regarding the consolidation of an elementary school and the repurpose of that school. This recommendation is in response to a board-approved spending cut plan and a strategic plan. On January 27th, 2020, the board unanimously approved a spending cut strategy for the district that included the consolidation and repurposing of 3 elementary schools. The strategy was then embedded into the strategic plan unanimously approved by the board on February 24th, 2020. The plan called for the repurposing of 2 elementary schools before the start of the 2021-22 school year, and the repurposing of an additional elementary school before the start of the 2022-23 school year. A task force was created to inform the administration about the process and the execution of such a consolidation. Board members, tonight you establish committees that you participate on. Those are board-established committees that meet the qualification of the open door law. I readily identify committees such as COVID task force, such as the task force and committees that were established to set up the actual strategic plan process itself. But in this matter, I believe the board included these actions in the strategic plan in response to the unhappy truth. The unhappy truth of student scarcity. Student scarcity was a key finding in the McKibben demographic study that was looked at 2021 to 2031. The study found many things, but I will highlight 4 of those for you tonight. The resident total fertility rate for Vigo County School Corporation over the life of this forecast is below replacement value, 1.49% versus a replacement value level of 2.1%. The local 18 to 24 age population continues to leave the district, going to college or moving to other urbanized areas. This population group accounts for the largest segment of the district's out-migration flow and will increase steadily over the next 10 years. Discerning there is that would be our future elementary parents. Total district enrollment is forecasted to decrease to 13,000 students by 2030. Another factor identified in the study causing the district enrollment to decrease over the next several years is little to no housing turnover. With this understanding that we are a county and district, I believe that the total number of VCSC elementary schools compared with other similar sized districts which have 11 elementary schools, and the total number of elementary schools with an enrollment of less than 300 students should also be factors in the board's decision to right-size the district and include cuts in the plan. As the community plan continues, the theory of the economy of scale is a critical component to the planning process for our district. It ensures efficient use of the money needed to operate schools. This includes the planning of our high schools as much as it does our middle schools and our elementary schools. In the referenda campaign, the economy of scale was key, a key component to identify for our taxpayers as a spending reduction. An economy of scale is demonstrated when schools can derive a lower cost per student due to the ability to distribute that expense for a fixed cost over more time. As presented to the board last year, this recommendation finds an economy of scale without sacrificing teacher-to-student ratios. Following the guidance of the strategic plan, committee composed of administrators, teachers, staff, citizens, was formed to assist in the recommendation of repurposing 2 elementary schools. On January 25th, 2021, the board approved the administration's recommendation to repurpose West Vigo Elementary School and Deming Elementary School following 2 scheduled meetings of the board to receive public comment. Using that same process, I stand before you tonight. Tonight, after a review of several factors presented by our consolidation committee on December 1st at Terre Haute South, the following 2 public comment periods provided by the board to the board on December 13th and at Meadows Elementary School on January the 5th. The recommendation, the administrative recommendation, that Meadows Elementary School is to be consolidated into Benjamin Franklin Elementary School, Lost Creek Elementary School, Davis Park Elementary School, and Devaney Elementary School. These schools have room. The impact of class size has been presented to you. The students will be moving from grade schools to grade schools with the capacity to serve them. Further, this recommendation requests that Meadows be repurposed into a learning laboratory consisting of the following possible programming with the understanding outside operation funds and no educational funds will be used to operate the lab. Programming being considered is the following: a financial center for grade level field trips, which include Let's Get Real and Biz Town, which is sponsored by Junior Achievement. The NEAT experience, the new and emerging automation technology experience was created by the VCSC in collaboration with many community partners. We also could possibly see the relocation of the virtual elementary education program to that site as well. Board, I know this is not easy for you. I know you ran for office to make a difference. We hope, don't we, that we make it different, that we hope that making a difference can be easy, that deep impact can be made without sacrifice. I wish tonight's recommendation could do all of that. But you know where we are as a district. We know where we are as a district in regards to our enrollment. We know where we are in regards to our district for funding. That is why placed in these positions to help us move this strategic plan forward. So I have a recommendation on the floor.
I'd like to make a motion to keep Meadows Elementary School open and not repurpose it.
I would second that.
A motion on the floor from Mrs. Wise, seconded by Mrs. Scott. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to take my mask down and go over a couple points, 3 points actually, that I came up with. Our strategic plan that we voted in February 24th of 2020 wasn't designed as a static document. It's a fluid document to be changed as needed. The 5 of us on the board that worked on the strategic plan would agree that where we were in 2019 is not where we're at in 2022. And I want to thank you to all the consolidation committee members for all the hard work and time you put in to arrive at your recommendation. I too have sat on a board-appointed committee in 2020. Our meetings were advertised by the school corporation. We took public comments for hours during the pandemic with the media present. Our committee was never allowed to make a formal recommendation to the full board because our committee recommendation didn't align with the superintendent's recommendation. We can't allow this to happen again, otherwise what's the point of having a committee? And lastly, this board has listened to solid, logical reasons why Meadows Elementary should not be closed or repurposed. And to my fellow board members, please do the right thing and keep Meadows Elementary open.
If you can hear me, can you hear me when that's done? Okay. I think there's some glaring problems with this recommendation. I understand that we are shrinking, but I don't feel like it's happening at the rapid pace that would justify closing the school. I think it would be much more reasonable if we were to redistrict. And this is a common theme that I have heard from parents from Meadows, parents from all over the corporation, actually. We have 700 children in Lost Creek. This is proposed to move Lost Creek to 739. Myself, I think 700 is too big. And I also think this is something that we can pay attention to. We can watch this. We can see, are we really shrinking at a rapid pace? Or is this something that has been projected, if I understand the McKibben study, to happen gradually, and then we are to level off at 13,000. We're approximately 13,700 now. It's a conversation the community needs to have. What size is okay with everybody? I mean, the first people we can look to is our educators. We know that when a building reaches a certain size, problems develop. I'm not talking about class size. I'm talking about things such as getting the buses in and out of an area, getting the parents picking up children in and out of an area. How many times boards have been pointed out to us about Lost Creek's parking, about what a terrible time that is to try to get in and out of that school. People have said to us concerning Franklin, don't send us more kids. We just got kids from Denton. We know that Davis Park is small, like Denton. People have said, why would you not send the kids to the same school? Why are you burdening, take for instance, Devaney? Devaney would be pushed to almost 500. I recently visited Sugar Creek Consolidated. They are at 500. They are bulging at the seams. So here again, ask yourself, what's acceptable? 739, when most of us think 700 is too big. Are we this poor as a corporation? Do we need to save money this badly? And there's an English teacher in the crowd that can help me with either one of those. But you know, that's what we have to ask ourselves. When we're better at this together, we can delay this vote. We can go back to the drawing board. And that's what I would recommend. I think that having this recommendation December 1st in winter, and you know the temperatures that we've had lately, there are people that may have had ideas that we didn't hear from because they weren't at one of these meetings on a frigid cold night. And we have had a couple of gentlemen approach us about if Davis Park shouldn't be the school that we repurpose, and we should send those kids to Deming. That's another conversation that we have not had. And I, like you, Joni, appreciate all the work that these people did on these committees. Absolutely. And we know what it's like to work on a committee.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of work. But, I mean, we have to ask ourselves, why do we run for school board? Isn't it to represent our people, our districts? If you can't represent the people in your own neighborhood who are asking you, pleading with you to take another look, then I don't understand the system. I don't understand how we went out there and said, vote for me, I'm going to represent you. Now, I have too much integrity to go along with this recommendation.
Is there other discussion?
I think what that does leave out, those are good points. As a part of the strategic plan, we also identified that there was an over $7 million spending deficit. And every time that administration has presented updates to us about the spending cuts, the goals have been met so far, and this is just another step in that plan, or, excuse me, the proposed reconsolidation of Meadows was another step in that plan. So without taking the administration's recommendation, we're leaving that amount out of the strategic plan. And we talk about the referendum and how we don't want to be a referendum county where we require operational funds on top of what we receive. In order to end that, we have to be no longer at a spending deficit. And when you talk about ending a referendum, either it be early or on time, the referendum is roughly $7 million. The last year before you end it, you have to put away that $7 million into a rainy day fund, leave it in a cash balance, something like that. Otherwise, when that referendum goes away, you're right back at deficit spending. How that pertains to this, I believe this was part of the spending cut plan. And now if we deny this, we have to come up with something else.
And I think we could come up with something else. That's part of my thinking, is that there is little to no public support for this, that I have been contacted by people all over the county, too many to even remember.
I think we also have to remember that we are in a good position financially, and that's why we were able to put so much extra money in our rainy day fund. I believe we did that at our last meeting, but we're in a good position.
I think a lot of that is due to the one-time deposit of funds from ESSER and COVID, and that's not something we can count on long-term.
Right.
And when I look at the strategic plan, that's what attracted me to want to serve on this board. Thought it was a fantastic opportunity to address long-standing issues that have been happening, in our corporation for a long time. And the implementation of a strategic plan is the hard part. And I understand and I hear the concerns that you're bringing up, but I have to agree with Mr. Irwin. If we don't address these things, I feel like a dereliction of duty to me to ignore those spending deficits that we've been faced with and not to implement the plan that we've spent so long and carefully working on, I think would be the wrong choice.
I don't think this plan has been so long. If I'm remembering, we're at 11 months. And are we so stagnant that we cannot wait? Like Jody said, we are in a good position financially, that we couldn't look at this a year from now, 2 years from now. And if we're serious about saving money, why don't we ever talk about the athletic center? The last time I checked the numbers on that, it cost $753,000. And that was in a year.
I think that's something that's definitely in the past.
$100.
The aquatic center is definitely in the past. We can restrict our comments to
No,
what we're talking
no,
about.
I'm not restricting my comments, Mrs. because it's not in the past. We pay for that every day, just like we pay all of our other bills.
I'm saying the
It was
decision was
voted in the past,
Yes.
but that's 653,000 minus the 100,000 or so for revenue. That's not in the past. That's right now, that's every day.
I also think it's unusual, we had the meeting at West, I hear about the three potential school plans, or the three plans. We heard business leaders from all over the community saying, boy, if we had better high schools, we would have, more people move to Terre Haute, we'd have, better economy. And it's like, oh, we'll have to close Meadows because we're so, destitute and our town's so awful, not growing, terrible. But then on the other hand, it's saying, let's do these high schools and we'll have all these people come in and everything will be fine. It's like, what, you pick an answer that fits your point of view.
The water leak at North High School alone will indicate the need for changes in those buildings.
Absolutely.
And those do impact. As one who's involved in hiring in a higher education institution, I am continually alarmed at the number of faculty who choose to live outside of Vigo County because of the schools, the high schools that we have, and they don't find them satisfactory. Higher ed, if they want to continue to be able to recruit, if we want to bring good business to town, those high schools are critically important. I do think we also have a fiduciary responsibility. That money is temporary. We are looking at potential high school referendum, and that one of the goals was to potentially end the operational referendum early, which depends upon that cash balance. And so that money will have to come from elsewhere. So while to keep a school open, that might require then some staff cuts in those places that are coming out of the savings right now, those rainy day funds that we are having to do. And that doesn't meet our students' needs either.
We have a recommendation, a motion on the floor, and a second, and call for a vote. Dr. Guller?
Yes, the motion is to keep Meadows open. The motion by Mrs. Wise, a second by Mrs. Scott. Mrs. Lohr?
No.
Ms. Lauer?
No.
Dr. Powers?
No.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Irwin?
No.
Mrs. Killian?
No.
It's five noes and 2 yeses.
Yeah, the motion has died, and we still have a recommendation on the floor from Dr. Hayworth at this time.
I move to accept the recommendation from Dr. Hayward.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mrs. Lauer to accept Dr. Hayward's recommendation and a second from Dr. Irwin. Is there any discussion?
I'm not a
Or,
doctor.
excuse me, Mr. Irwin. Got promotion.
But you stated a lot of
This has been a very, very difficult decision, and I mean, most of us are, all of us live in Vigo County, and we are passionate about Vigo County and the wellness of the whole community. And with the schools, we all have attended, I think most of us have attended the schools here in Vigo County, and we have those same passions toward those schools that we've attended. I will say, being the elder here on the board, almost every single one of my schools have closed. And it is difficult to look at a community that is so well represented as the Meadows School and has such a wonderful history, and I have a lot of connections with Meadows School. And it has been one of our star elementary schools, but things do change. I think we have fiduciary responsibility to the community and to the whole community of Vigo County School Corporation. And it has
also want to make this abundantly clear that this recommendation at this time does not include the field in front of Meadows. That is not moving forward at this time. It may in the future, but it is not a part of this recommendation.
It's a whole nother discussion.
I'd just like to say that, although I appreciate your comments about people being attached to schools and neighborhoods, I don't have any attachment to Meadows, didn't go there myself, didn't have any friends or family that I know of that went there. For me, this is just purely a numbers situation, and I feel passionately about the size of schools, and 700 is too big, and having Lost Creek 2.3 miles away from Deming, or Meadows, with Meadows having approximately 200, doesn't appear to me to be rocket science to fix that problem.
I just wanted to take a moment also to thank everyone who had brought concerns and questions to the board, email and in person, particularly the students and the young children who braved the microphone to stand up and share in front of large crowds. That was extremely impressive, and we're proud of you for doing that. And I agree, this has been one of the most difficult things to work through. Every question that was brought to me, I put to the administration, and we worked through those. To me, it was satisfactory, and I was very impressed with the work that this committee, the task force did. I just want to commend them and Dr. Fenton for her leadership there. We've benefited a lot from the insights of our community leaders in the process, and I didn't want to let this opportunity go by not to say thank you.
May I add? I would just, sorry, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I know I am not there in person, and I hate that I'm not there to see everyone and be there, but the full heart and passion of our community has been on display this whole time. And as a parent with students in the corporation, bravo. I mean, that I appreciate the community stepping up and advocating, and I hope that continues with every decision the school board is presented with. This has not been easy. It's very difficult, and it is not taken lightheartedly at all. This board is tasked, not even tasked, but even just presented with recommendations at this time that are very difficult. We put a lot of thought and effort into these, and then I don't want people to lose faith in the board or think we are a rubber stamp. That is not what we are doing.
Too late.
But I would just like to say, thank you for everyone advocating, and thank you for reaching out, as well as the hard work that the committee has put in to make this recommendation. And hear some of the accusations that have been said about them, and they still hold their head high with this recommendation, so thank you.
I'll concur that this is personal. It's my children's school, so it is personal for me as well. I also like those who came to meetings and raised issues, that you need to know that those are taken note of and those are acted upon. And so we take those questions, we take your questions, we ask our questions, we get more information back. Problems are cited, problems are brought up, those are investigated to determine if things can be resolved, if they're accurate or not. And so it is important that that comment continues to come, because it does make differences, and it does, even though you may not feel that, it does make a difference, and it does make for change.
We have a motion on the floor, and a second. Dr. Bullard, do a roll call, please.
Yes, we're voting to accept the recommendation for repurposing, redistricting Meadows Elementary School. Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
No.
Ms. Wise?
No.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Thank you. At this time, we have a call for citizen comments. I have several speakers here. We have about 9 speakers who registered to speak, so we'll have 5 minutes on the clock for each speaker. The first on the list is Angela Tanner.
Mrs. Lauer will be keeping time this year.
If you could remember to address your comments to the board only. Thank you.
I have no problem addressing them to the board. Thank you, Ms. Scott and Ms. Wise, for actually listening to us. You may have asked questions, but you did not respond to your constituents with those answers. You still have not provided any net savings numbers. And we have Dr. Hayworth's assurance that nothing was wrong with how that was ran, but that was the state of Indiana's access counselor. I think I know who I trust.
I believe it says Debbie Constantine. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I'll try to make this brief. I did look at the McKibben study a little bit. I didn't know it was on the board's website until today. But I had but one of the things that I noticed about that is that those are based off of 2010 census figures. And on the census.gov website under datacensus.gov are some other figures called let me get the name of those, American Community Survey. And those are done in between 2010 and 2020 when the surveys are taken. And one of the things that I found on there going by each township is that I would suggest that, I'm sorry, this is hard for me, that a school should not be closed in Harrison Township. According to the figures that I saw in the American Community Survey, 5 to 9 year olds would total 2890, but under 5-year-olds would be 3,526. These figures were taken in 2019. You might go either 2021, considering this is early 2022, or 2022, which would be like 2 to 7 or 3 to 8. But you do have losses in other parts of Vigo County. And some of those range from double digits to triple digits. And one of those that is a triple digit would be Lost Creek, with a projected loss of 123 students in Lost Creek. Now I'll go back again because the township boundaries do not necessarily correlate with the school district boundaries. But I also would like to present another figure that is a little more local. I went through all the websites for each of the schools and I counted the number of classes that are at each school. And kindergarten is 54, first grade is 55, second is 52, and then you go down for third grade to 44 and fourth grade to 44. Now some of these they don't account for how many students are in each class, and there are a few that I wasn't sure if it was a classroom because there's some split teachers, so I count them as fourth grade, and there's a co-teacher at one school for first grade, so I counted her with the first grade totals. So with those numbers from kindergarten, first and second, that indicates that there's that increase that you saw in that 2019 American Community Survey, and which goes to the point of a couple of these other board members are saying, well, maybe this isn't not, maybe this, I'm sorry. How much time do I have, ma'am?
1 minute and 45 seconds.
Okay, I think I can wrap it up. That there is an actual increase right now in students coming in. I could give this to somebody if this wants to be part of the record. I can send it by email as well.
You're welcome. You can bring it up here.
You can do both.
Okay, who specifically should I give this to?
Are you giving it to the acting president right now, or?
Go ahead with your.
If you want to hit it here on that, I'll pass it around.
Okay,
That'll make it easier for you.
Since we have a little bit of time, I would like to comment on safety for students going to Vanny. My daughter lives in the Vanny School District, and there is a dearth of sidewalks. It's very rare to find one. And if you're crossing from Brown on Poplar, there is no crosswalk for a student to take. And there's not that many through streets. And the only other through street I know of is 29th, which also doesn't have a crosswalk or sidewalks. So there was somebody who presented at the last meeting about the safety for kids going to the Vanny. And I wanted to take that time to agree with them and lend my support to that fact. Thank you for your time.
All right, next we have Kyle Kershaw.
This is my time.
Okay. Jenny Mueller.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I first want to say that I'm extremely disappointed in the lack of integrity that I've witnessed in the members who have voted to close Meadows tonight. We asked questions and expressed concerns that were factual, logical, and financially based. We never received valid responses to fully answer or address any of those concerns. You say this was a difficult decision, but I really can't believe that. I think the decision was made a long time ago for this to occur. You say you're not just rubber stamping the administration's recommendation, but that is exactly what you're doing. I think all of the work that has been done so far is completely discredited, and there is just even more distrust amongst the community and our board. Thank you.
Next is Valerie Kershaw.
I do not wish to speak anymore, thank you.
Okay. Steve Winklepleck.
You got the name right, I'm happy. Not too many people do. Just a little background information for you. My son went to Meadows. He went to Woodrow Wilson. He went to Terre Haute North. We have lived in the same house all those years. He's now 38 years old. When he went to Meadows, Dr. Pitts was the principal. Excellent. But let's talk a little bit about students instead of about money. And November 30th, 2021, somebody from the school board told WTHI, Meadows Elementary has less than 200 students. Now, I don't know where they got that from, but according to the best elementary schools in Vigo County School Corporation by schooldigger.com, we have 314 students at Meadows. That's an increase now. That's from 2021 to now. That's an increase of 115 students. Over 58% increase, and you want to get rid of it? Doesn't make sense. Also, again, according to schooldigger.com, I can't even do that now. Meadows per student expenditure is $9,323. That is number 7 on the list of 18 schools. So you're not spending as much as several of the other schools in the district on. Also, Meadows School Elementary ranking out of 18 schools, 3rd grade English language, we ranked 10th. 4th grade English language, we ranked 7th. 5th grade, we ranked 11th. Then you go to math, 3rd grade, we ranked number 2. 4th grade, number 3. 5th grade, number 5.
Science, 4th grade, number 5. You're penalizing the students by moving them to a school that perhaps doesn't have those good of a record. So you're penalizing the students. You're not penalizing, well, you're penalizing everybody, but the students are our future. I think you have made a bad decision on this.
Next we have Wyoming Pruitt.
Members of the board and the school corporation, this was a test. Your community tested you. And with the exception of 2 people here, you have failed. You have failed the students. You have failed the parents. You have failed the teachers. And you have failed your community. Thank you.
Caitlin Trejo.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Trejo, and I would just like to thank Rosemary and Jenny for actually returning our emails with sincerity and coming to our school and looking at our students. None of the rest of you did that, I don't think. You did absolutely nothing for our students, which you work for them. You're supposed to be providing them with their education. You're not doing anything for them. You've done absolutely nothing but cause trouble for them, so. But I would like to, in the future, I hope you all become more responsible and actually go to the schools, talk to the teachers and students, and that's all. Thank you.
Last we have Brian Payne.
I'd like to start by reading an email that I sent out to the entire board. And unfortunately, you weren't able to receive it because you were in executive session. Dear board members and members of the press, I had fervently hoped to be able to address the board with this information prior to tonight's vote on the Meadows recommendation. However, we'll skip that because that is done. Immediately following the recommendation to repurpose Meadows that was made public December 1st, we began asking for information so that we could understand how the task force appointed to make the recommendation on this came to their conclusions. We have already shared with you the obstacles we encountered, and I know that some of you encountered them too. It did not seem to us that this is how a committee should operate. So one of our parents reached out to the expert in this matter, the Indiana Public Access Counselor. We'll just say PAC from here on out. You have been by now made aware of that informal opinion. It is public access. This community's issue on this can now be Googled, and it's out there and is a testament of how not to hold committee meetings when making a big decision. 2 questions were asked of the PAC. Was the task force, also called a consolidation or reorganization committee, that was created to implement the strategic plan subject to open door law, and did the task force closed meetings violate the open door law? On both accounts, the informal opinion was very clear. There can be no question that the task force is a governing body subject to open door law. Secondly, therefore, to the extent the task force meets behind closed doors without requisite notice being posted, it will be violating the open door law. And I want to pause here and just say this was all provided to this board the last evening prior to this meeting. And granted, as I noted, had hoped to talk about it earlier. Furthermore, the PAC documented their opinion further, saying that the secrecy does nothing but invite more suspicion and scrutiny. The point of open meetings is to keep the public informed, yes, but it has a dual purpose. Those who serve on boards can use public meetings as a platform to demonstrate that a task force work is positively benefiting the public, the right people make up the task force, and to communicate that the task force is thoughtfully deliberating the issues at hand. To do otherwise is usually indicative of poor governance and a disregard of the community it serves. In any community, a committee operating in this way is unacceptable. But in this particular community, the actions of this committee will only further erode the community's already damaged trust in the school corporation. I would argue that the committee's actions also jeopardize the very necessary work you spoke to, and I fervently agree with you that we must do to overcome the challenges facing our schools. They're real. But how can the administration that's willing to operate a committee in violation of open door law, open door law, successfully pass a much needed $160 to $260 million referendum to renovate and replace our high schools? The high schools are just one looming decision, mind you. How will the administration be able to legitimately recommend the closure of a 4th elementary school when it comes time, or even a middle school? This model has issues. To be fair, Dr. Hayworth inherited a ship in disrepair that was taking on water. The previous captain of this ship let personal interest and the interest of his friends get in the way of properly caring for our ship. Our state legislator is also responsible for the rough waters we're in as they continue to change the rules of how funding is provided to public schools and how it can be used. Taken all together, there's now only one way for our public schools to stay afloat. They must grow and nurture the necessary public support to pass referendums needed to fill in the financial holes that the state will no longer assist with. What this means, the process of how the administration goes about its work is paramount. As the PAC clearly noted, without transparency, this work done in secret does nothing but invite more suspicion and scrutiny. And I see I'm cutting it close, so we are gonna skip to what I'm not here to just raise issue. I also, in this email, proposed an alternative, and I will speak quickly to it.
Real quickly.
Thank you. What we are asking for is a comprehensive, independent second opinion. No different than you would ask from your doctor when he gives you the bad news of cancer. That is what we are simply asking for. And I reached out to 2 such experts and provided them to you. And there is precedent for this within our very own community. When Terre Haute City Council was trying to make sense of the city's dire budget situation in 2014, they hired an outside financial consultant, though not without pushback from the mayor. I sent you the link to that article. Secondly, when the Vigo County Commissioners faced significant public scrutiny over the difficult decision to properly size a new jail, they relented to public pressure and hired an independent consultant to perform a jail assessment. You also have the link to that. I provided you the 2 contacts that I've been in touch with that would be more than happy to recommend consultants for you to get this community a second opinion. And I am on my wrapping up statement paragraph here. The vote on the recommendation to repurpose Meadows tonight is truly a crossroads for this community and our public schools. Credible transparency issues have been raised about how this administration has opted to make decisions to save costs through closing elementary schools.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. I gave you an extra minute, so you need to conclude. Thank you very much.
All right, and my last sentence would be, to regain the public trust, we demand a comprehensive, independent study that looks at all the alternatives available for true cost savings that equitably distribute the costs and benefits of our public schools throughout this entire community. Thank you.
That concludes our citizen comments for tonight. Thank you all for that. And next, we have information additional from the superintendent or from board members.
Did I ask if there was anyone else that wanted to speak?
They have to sign up.
I wasn't aware that there was a
Who
sign
came in late?
Rosemary, we have people that sign up. and they
Everyone
come
has
in.
signed
I'm well, Mrs. Love. This gentleman came in late. I thought we could be gracious because we had several sign up that did not speak.
Okay, one more, I guess. Can you give us your name, please?
Sure, I'm Matt Larmer. I've spoken at board meetings before, and so I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I do want to point out, again, that there is a dramatic disparity between the performance of our elementary schools in our rural communities and in our urban communities. One of the things that I loved about Meadows Elementary School was that it was one of the most economically diverse schools in our corporation. Its district was between economically diverse communities, and so it brought students from all kinds of different backgrounds together. I also want to apologize to this board that you've been put in a difficult situation. We acknowledge that, by decisions that have been made by other city leaders to put special interests above the much needed improvements for our students in our educational system. It's put you in a very difficult place. One thing that I'm desperately asking is that when we make plans for the future, and when we look at decisions that need to be made, that we would look at ensuring economic diversity within our middle schools, that we would take a hard look at the disparity between the performance of our rural elementary schools and our urban elementary schools. It's a regular occurrence for our urban elementary schools to score below 20% in the past standardized testing, below 10% on reading and math. And it's just as common for our rural schools to perform above 60% or above 70%. A child's educational future should not depend on the zip code that they are born into. And that's a difficult problem to solve, but we can't solve it until we acknowledge that it exists. And so I just ask and I plead that in the future, when we're making decisions like this, that we would address those concerns and look at ways that we can provide exceptional education to all the kids in our entire community. Thank you.
Next, we have any additional information from Superintendent Haworth or other board members. I think one of the things that I personally would like to hear about and from is a discussion on the open door issue, which is a serious allegation, and a better understanding how the committees operate, board-appointed committees, and versus those that the superintendent, that reports to the superintendent. If we could speak to that, Dr. Hayward, with legal counsel.
Please introduce yourself for those who don't know you. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, members of the public. John Mays, partner with Bose McKinney Evans and counsel for the school corporation. And there are different committees, as the board has recognized and as discussed, and that were the subject of the public access counselor's informal opinion, and that opinion assumes some facts that are not true. So there are committees that the board appoints and creates for input to the board. And yet tonight, at its organizational meeting, as it does every year, the board makes appointments to those committees, to those standing committees, and takes input from those committees directly.
There are other various committees, task force, what have you, that give input, that are created for input directed to the administration, to the superintendent, to the superintendent's administration team. It is those committees that give input directly to the board, that are created by the board, subcommittees even of the board itself, that are subject to the open door law. Those other committees, task force, what have you, are those that are not subject to the open door law. And so it is that distinction, that faulty factual understanding that was relayed to the public access counselor that created that informal opinion. And so those are the distinctions in the law and in the public access counselor's guidance. Any questions from the board?
So just to clarify, committees that report directly to the superintendent, by the superintendent, are not open to the open door.
Yeah, they're not subject to the open door law, and there even could be a couple of board members that serve on those committees. There can't be a majority or more that serve on those committees.
For example, the COVID,
That would be one. Yeah.
that would be an example of that. It's not.
And that's common throughout the state, is there's a number of textbook committees and all kinds of extracurricular reallocation committees and task force and working groups, whatever those titles might be, that are created for the benefit of the administration. Could be for the superintendent, could be for an athletic director, could be for a number of purposes that are created week to week throughout the state for that purpose. Ultimately, they may generate recommendations that the superintendent takes to the board, but they are not board committees subject to the open door law.
Right.
So the committees that we just established in our organizational meeting, those are the ones that
Those would be-
require notice.
Those are
and-
great examples of how you create a committee that gives that direct input and is subject to the open door law.
And when a superintendent committee, not a board committee, superintendent committee, presents information to the superintendent, he's allowed to invite the board through a work session to receive that information as well.
Certainly, and a lot of those committees that give input to a superintendent throughout the state, oftentimes, there's a couple of board members that actually serve on those committees. And that's not unusual throughout the state.
Thanks for the
Yes.
clarification.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any committee reports from board members?
Hopefully you get the meeting.
Yes, indeed. Seeing none, our future meeting will be this week, Thursday, January 13th at 6 p.m. here in the Administration Conference Center. And at this point, I will take a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were finished with that.
Did you call for it? I'm sorry.
I did call for it.
I'm sorry.
I make a motion to close the meeting.
I second that.
A motion is second, and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers, Ms. Scott, Ms. Wise, Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Thank you.